Hi guys, my name's Daniel, and today I will be talking partially about a book I read recently. I think it's pretty popular and like common to read in high school, but I just guess I never read it. But it's Candide by Voltaire. One of my followers recommended it to me under one of my tweets at one point, and then I just decided to read it because it was a pretty quick read. Um, and then I'm tying that into just the fact that we talk a lot about like in another lifetime this or in another lifetime that. Um, and so first, I want to give a quick little summary about Candide and what it's about. So basically, it's kind of set like during that Enlightenment period, like in the kind of 1800s ish, like early 1800s, basically. And it's about this guy named Candide, and he lives in, I forgot what European country, but basically he lives on this estate. He falls in love with this girl that lives there, who I think is his cousin, weirdly. But so then I'm pretty sure they like get caught kissing when they're little, and then he gets kicked out because they're like related. But um, then he ends up on all these like weird little random little travels and stuff, and eventually he kind of travels the whole world. And throughout his journey, there's this guy who was almost like a mentor teacher kind of guy for him named Pangloss. And when Voltaire wrote this book, I think a really common thing at the time, like an argument, was like this kind of religious optimism where everything is okay because God is good and God has willed it. And so Voltaire kind of responded to that by kind of making fun of it in a way. So Pangloss basically says like we live in the best of all possible worlds, and anytime anything bad happens, it's like, oh, it's okay because we live in the best of all possible worlds. So like the state they live on gets kind of like attacked, and they think the whole family lives there, and Candide obviously isn't there, but he's in love with that girl whose name is Cunegonde, something like that, Cunegonde. um and so then he thinks that they're all dead, and he runs into Pangloss, who now is suffering from syphilis, and his like nose is rotted away, and he's just in horrible state. But he basically just says like, "Oh, it's okay. We live in the best of all possible worlds. Syphilis was brought over from the New World, but if Columbus hadn't set sail to the New World, we wouldn't have chocolate. So it's okay that I have syphilis." And basically, the whole story kind of goes like that. Like they go to Lisbon. There's a big earthquake that actually happened in real life, that killed a lot of people, and then they go to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, and they reunite with Cunegonde, but then they got kind of get split up there. What's his face? Oh my god, Candide. I forgot the name for a second. But Candide makes it to El Dorado, and everything is absolutely perfect. They have like riches, like the ground is made of rubies and gold and all sorts of like gemstones and stuff like that. And everybody's like a philosopher and like super intelligent. It's just like a perfect utopia. But um Candide gets really bored and doesn't want to live there, and he wants to go find Cunegonde. And so he ends up leaving, and then he makes it to Constantinople. So he basically does an entire journey like throughout a lot of the world. And he makes it back to Constantinople, and he's reunited with Cunegonde, but she's ugly now, and so he like reluctantly kind of marries her. And the story kind of ends like on this note where everybody's kind of still alive. Like there's everybody's dead at one point, and then they all like magically survive whatever circumstances they were in. But basically at the end they go to like a philosopher, and they want to know like how to be happy in life, what's the meaning of life and stuff like that. And the philosopher just like shuts his door on them. And then they see like a farmer, and he's working happily and stuff. And then the book kind of concludes with them just kind of going like, I guess we'll just tend to our garden or some along those lines. And so the context of the book, like I mentioned earlier, is basically like at the time it was really common to say like God is good, God has willed it. In Colombia, that's actually like a common thing to say. Like in Spanish, we would say like, "Oh, esos 3 millones no te no te convenían," basically, and like the direct translation would be like those that money, like I don't know, like a random like $5,000 bonus wasn't convenient for you, or that would be like the direct translation. But like it wasn't in the cards for you, like it wasn't meant to be, kind of thing, because God has better plans for you, kind of vibe. And so in the book, like it's like what I was saying, like that was a big argument in the philosophy theology kind of world, and everybody would say like God is good, so therefore the universe has to be good. We have to live in the best of all possible worlds. And Voltaire was really against that. Um, I have my own like little thoughts about like the whole like theology of it. I don't really want to dive too deep into that, but it definitely reminded me of something that I've kind of noticed pop up in the last like 3 years, maybe. I was actually thinking about this early when I first started seeing people talk about this, and like obviously it's always been like a thing, but I feel like when Everywhere Everything All at Once came out, and that one line about like I would have really loved like doing laundry and taxes with you dropped, and everybody was like just falling in love with it basically and just kept repeating it. I think at that point is when I started seeing more people talk about like, oh, in another lifetime maybe we wind up together, or in another universe um I get to be a kid for a little longer. And I know like for a while like I would tweet that stuff out and stuff like that, and people would eat that up. And that's really like a sentiment of like, it's kind of like an opposite to the best of all possible worlds in Candide, because in Candide I think the idea is more of like the world is as it is and it's actually good because we've just decided it's good because God is good. While the in another universe or in another lifetime, it's more so like maybe this wasn't the lifetime, but at least I have the consolation prize that somewhere else another version of me is with that girl, or has that job, or is doing the things I want to do. And so they're similar in some ways, but kind of like opposite in the way they go about it. And I really wanted to talk about that because like I just think it is a really prevalent thing to kind of sit around doom scrolling and being like, damn, in another lifetime I could be doing this, in another lifetime I could be with this person or doing that thing or making this much money and all that stuff. And in a lot of senses, I think I kind of fall a little bit into that, like, we live in the best of all possible worlds, because I just tend to be really optimistic. I always joke about like the winds of change are going to carry me to wherever I need to go next and all that. But in a lot of ways, I think that is true, but it feels different. Like, I think in a lot of senses, I accept that the world is really shitty, and there's definitely things that like I try not to have any regrets, but there are things that could have probably gone differently and they just didn't. Um, but the big thing is that like I've tried to really accept my circumstances and what has happened, and I've kind of done that for the most part. Like even if I haven't like even if things still kind of hurt from my past or kind of still bother me a little bit, for the most part it's not really necessarily like a, oh, I wish this would have happened kind of thing. It's more like, oh, it happened and it affects me this way, and it makes me feel this way. And so I think in a lot of ways people kind of tend to get really caught up on like what could have been instead of focusing on what like they have. So the book, like I mentioned earlier, kind of ends on that note about like they go to a philosopher to ask him like the meaning of life and all that, and then he just kind of doesn't give him an answer, and then they just see a farmer working his land, and they ask him about how to be happy and stuff like that, and he essentially just tells them to like work the land. So then they just Candide basically says something about like, let us cultivate our garden or something along those lines. And I actually had to watch a crash course video to kind of understand the book a little bit better. It's pretty straightforward, but sometimes I'll miss things, and I just like seeing other people's like analysis of it. And in the crash course, they were kind of saying that like that was more of like a individualistic kind of view to it. The way I kind of saw it, just because of where I was coming from and like my point of view on all that, was essentially like, let us cultivate our garden, in the sense that, you know, we could worry about what things are going to be like tomorrow, or what the meaning of life is, or if I'm doing the right thing right now to set up my future and all that. But really, all I got to do is just kind of keep living in the present and doing the things I do, like cultivate my garden, um, work on my hobbies, keep doing my job. And that's not to say that like we live in the best of all possible worlds, so I'm just gonna be content. Like, I saw this TikTok one time that I really like, and I'll kind of reference every now and then. And it was essentially like talking about the same thing, actually, about in another lifetime this or in another universe that, but I refuse that. I'm gonna knit the very threads of existence together and create my own future and story and stuff like that. And I really like that because I think in a lot of senses, like I said, we just kind of sit around doom scrolling and everything. We end up on like the real TikToks or see a bunch of other people kind of just living lives we wish we could live. And we kind of just want that and don't do anything about it. Like, we almost live vicariously through other people. And I know, like, I kind of do it. Like, one of my biggest dreams of all time has always been to like bike from Alaska to Argentina. And I even made like a bet with my brother when I was younger that I would do it by the time I'm like 20 something, and I'd bet him like $1,000 when I was like 10, which I hope the debt collector doesn't come for that, because my brother is not going to get that money anytime soon. But um, I have, like, there's this one account that would post like videos of him doing that exact thing, and to me that seems so cool, and that's something I wish I could do. And I think I'm gonna start trying to take steps to like at least dip my toe in the water, you know? Maybe I don't do a big ass trip like that because I don't really have the money for it, but maybe I can bike to like some town a couple 100 miles away or something like that, and just start working from there instead of just kind of sitting around being like, oh, this guy's doing that, this guy's doing that. Like, for example, like Outdoor Boys, I never was really a viewer of him. I would just kind of see his TikToks and stuff every now and then. And I think it is nice that he was posting his videos, he was teaching stuff, it was really good content. And I completely get why he kind of just left the scene, because as soon as he did, like, he decided to retire from YouTube because people were just harassing him and his family. And as soon as he did, people were just like harassing his family about why he left and stuff like that. So I don't blame him at all. But I think now that like he's gone and people don't have something to watch while they're like eating their meal or whatever, now's the perfect chance to just like, if you always wanted to go camping and just never have, just go do it. Or if you always wanted to go hike a mountain or go do some crazy adventure, like, what's stopping you? Because really, like, unless you live in like the middle of New York and there's no place to camp. But like, for example, for me, I always talk about how I'm gonna go camping every single summer, and then for one reason or another, I'm like kind of busy. But really, busy just means that like I work during the week, and then during the weekends I just kind of like go do something with my friends, and then decide that I don't really want to do anything else besides that. And so this summer I've kind of really started doing a lot more outdoorsy things and things that I've wanted to do. So I think I've spent most of the weekends this summer just sleeping in a tent somewhere. And it's not exactly like a big like backpacking trip where I'm like going through some mountain passage or something like that. I did a little bit of like camping in the mountains like a few weekends, but it's just kind of like driving to other cities and like sleeping in a tent or doing stuff like that, and really just enjoying the summer more than I have traditionally. Because a lot of times, like, I'll go to the lake and paddleboard around and go hiking a lot because it's one of my big things. But camping has never really been something that I've really like put the time and effort into really making time for. And this summer it has been. There's also some other hikes where I always like tell my friends like, oh, I want to do this hike or I want to do that hike, and they're like, they're like 12-hour hikes that typically like I'm just too lazy to do, honestly, because they do take forever. But I'm gonna do them this summer at some point. And instead of sitting around like saying like, oh, maybe in another lifetime I do this, or maybe in another universe I do that, I just have decided that I'm gonna do the most I can to do that things. And it doesn't mean that like you're not always gonna like accomplish your dreams. So like maybe you want to ask some girl out or something like that, or some boy, and you are really scared because you don't know what the answer is, and like you should just go for it. There's nothing really like it's scary, but you're not gonna get like kneecapped or something the moment you ask them out. But sometimes they'll be into you and then sometimes they won't be, and that's just something you got to live with. But at least like, you know, instead of just kind of doing the whole yearning thing where like, oh, in another lifetime I asked her out and we end up together, or things like that. Or same with like a job, like maybe you're really like comfortable in the job you're in, and maybe you kind of want to go for like a raise or go for a job that pays a little bit more you might enjoy. Or maybe it's like something that's just outside of what you went to school for. And like, I don't know, if it's something you want to do, like why not do it instead of just kind of sitting around and um kind of wondering how things could be. Because I think that's the big thing. Like I don't want to live a life where I'm just always sitting around and thinking about like what could have been or what should have been and stuff like that. Like I said before, like bad things happen and that sucks, and it's not like you deserve them or really like it should have happened to you, but now that it has, you kind of just have to pick up like the pieces and keep moving forward where you're at. Because if you just kind of stay still, then you're just kind of letting all the things that have happened to you that are like negative dictate who you are. And like I said, like last week, like, or not last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, I'm not consistent with my videos at all, but like I said last video, we're always just kind of like constantly changing and becoming new people and stuff like that. And if you just kind of stagnate like that, it's just not a good feeling, especially when you're just crawled up, like bundled up in fetal position, just going like, in another universe I did this, in another lifetime I did that. We live in the best of all possible worlds. This is all part of a plan. And yeah, that's really all I have. Like, it was kind of a short video. I read that book. One of my mutuals kind of, or not mutuals, just followers, recommended it to me, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. It was definitely a little dated. There was a lot of like weird stereotypes from the 1800s and stuff, but I kind of like the general like idea of it. And it just made me think about this stuff. So definitely, if you guys have any like other book recommendations, I've been in my reading era. Um, if you guys have any comments or thoughts about like living in another lifetime or like in another universe, or about the whether or not we live in the best of all possible worlds, let me know down in the comments, and make sure you guys leave a like, share with your friends, just say hi if that's all you got. Okay, and then I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm reading some other books. We'll see if I bring those up or what the next topic will be, but love you guys. See you in the next one.